have a lot to get into this video, where we are going to learn how to defeat a level 2 cog, which is a lot more complicated than defeating a level 1 cog. And so we're just going to dive right into the analysis without wasting much time. We know the equation for the health of a level x cog is x plus 1 times x plus 2, or x squared plus 3x plus 2. And so when we plug this in for a level 2 cog, we get 3 times 4, or 4 plus x plus 2, which is going to be 12. Furthermore, we know the equation for the accuracy of our gags. We only have 2 gags, a cupcake and a squirting flower. The prop accuracy of the cupcake at base, or of any throw gag at base, is 75%. And then we have level 1 experience, which means that we get no bonus. We are going to try to defeat a level 2 cog, which means we subtract 5 points, and there's going to be no bonus, which means that the accuracy of our cupcake against a level 2 cog is going to be 70%. We subtract 1 from that, and we get the probability of the throw missing at 30%. We follow the same logic for Squirt with a base accuracy of 95% against a level 2 cog, and we get 90%, and therefore the probability of the Squirt missing is 10%. Now we notice that the damage that a cupcake does is 4, and the damage that a squirting flower does is 3, which means that in order to kill a level 2 cog, we can use 3 cupcakes or 4 squirting flowers. We can also notice that a mixed strategy is not going to be optimal because the squirting flower is going to do less damage than the cupcake, and therefore throwing in any cupcakes to the throw strategy would only make it weaker and will not be able to defeat the cog in 3 turns. Therefore, we're stuck between 2 strategies of either using purely cupcake or purely squirt in flower. We get these 2 probabilities when we calculate the probability, like we did in the first video, of the probability that we get no misses and we just kill the cog on the first run through. For the all throw strategy, we get 34%, and for the all squirt strategy, we get a 65.6%, which means we may conclude, just like we did in the first episode or the first video, that squirt is the optimal strategy. But not so fast, because this only takes 3 turns, while this takes 4 turns. Therefore, we also need to consider the probability in an all-throw strategy of 1 miss of the throw, but we still defeat the cog in 4 turns. This will be slightly more complicated than simply assuming all hit. As we learned in the first episode, the way that we compound probabilities is we simply multiply the probabilities together. The probability of 3 throws hitting in a row is the probability of 1 throw hitting times the second throw hitting times the third throw hitting. It's actually the same thing when we are putting misses into our calculation. However, there's going to be one little change that we're going to have to account for. So let's conceptually think about how would we kill a cog using the all-throw strategy in 4 turns. You may think that it can be hit, 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 miss, hit, miss, hit, hit, it doesn't matter. But actually, that first way is not going to kill the cog in exactly 4 turns, because if the first 3 hit, then the cog will already have been defeated. Therefore, we know that in order to kill the cog using the all-throw strategy in 4 turns exactly, the last sequence has to be a successful throw hit. That means that here, the last thing in our calculation will have to be multiplying by 0.7. But for the other 3, we need exactly 2 hits and exactly 1 miss. So the probability of a miss is 0.3, and the probability of a hit is 0.7. So we do 0.3 times 0.7 times 0.7 times 0.7. Now what is this? 3C2, what does that mean? That means 3 choose 2. What does 3 choose 2 mean? Well, think about it conceptually. It does not matter where this miss happens. This miss can be the first miss, the second miss, or the third miss. It doesn't matter. The sequence is the same. Therefore, we have to multiply by 3 choose 2, which is going to be equal to 3, because there are 3 ways that we can arrange the makes or the misses. we can arrange the miss as the first miss, the second miss, or the third miss. It doesn't matter. Therefore, in order to calculate the probability of 4 hits happening, of an all-throw strategy resulting in the defeat of a cog in exactly 4 turns, it's going to be 30.8%, and we use this this math to get that number. For 5 throw strategy, notice that the last thing multiplied by has to be a successful throw hit, so multiply by 0.7. We need 2 misses, exactly 2 misses, and exactly 2 hits, and then we do 4 choose 2. What that means is there are 4 choose 2 ways to arrange the misses or the makes. Actually, in fact, to be precise, by doing 3 choose 2, we are arranging the makes. But it's the same. 3 choose 2 and 3 choose 1 are going to get the same numerical value of 3. We don't really get too much into how exactly it's calculated. You can just plug it into your calculator. But 4 choose 2 is going to be 6, which makes sense because there are going to be 6 possible ways that we can arrange the 2 misses. It can be first and second, first and third, first and fourth, second and third, second and fourth, or third and fourth, which is 6. So you multiply 0.3 times 0.3 times 0.7 times 0.7 times 4 choose 2, which is 6, times 0.7, and the odds of it taking exactly 5 turns to kill a level 2 cog using the all-throw strategy is going to be 18.5%. This is the general formula for calculating how many it's going to take to kill, how many turns it's going to take given any strategy, whether it be an all-throw strategy or all squirt strategy, as long as the probability is the same. This is going to be n minus 1 times k minus 1. N minus 1 is the number of turns it takes. So for a 4-turn strategy, we're going to put in 4 here. So it's going to be 4 minus 1, which is 3. And k is going to be the number of hits that it takes. So for the all-throw strategy, it's going to be 3. For the all-squirt strategy, it's going to be 4. And that's going to get us the 3 choose 2 number. So this denominator for the all-throw strategy is always going to be 2. So if we were to apply this equation for this, we would get 4 choose 3, and then we take p to the k. So p is the probability of the gag hitting, which we know is 0.7. We raise it to the k power, which is 0.3, which is 3, and we see that that's consistent because we're doing 0.7 to the third, which is 0.7 times 0.7 times 0.7. And we multiply by 1 minus p, which is the probability that it misses, which is 0.3, to the n minus k, which is the number of turns minus the number of hits needed, which is going to be 5 minus 3, which is going to be squared. So 0.3 times 0.3. And we can see that this equation gets us this exact thing, but it's generalized, and therefore we can just always apply it. This, I think, is a pretty intuitive equation. It may be slightly daunting because it looks very mathematic, but once you understand it, you can simply apply it. But even if it is still more daunting, we are going to simplify it further, don't worry. If you want some practice applying this equation, try it for 6 turns and 7 turns, and these are the numbers you should get. If you were to multiply these probabilities together, the all-throw strategy with 3 turns, 4 turns, 5 turns, 6 turns, and 7 turns, add the probabilities together, not multiply them, you're going to get 96.9, which is not 100%, which implies that there's going to be a 3.1% chance that it takes more than 7 turns to kill the cog. This is a lot of math which you may not want to do, but it's still useful to know. But we're going to make it simple immediately. I do recommend, though, going through and using this equation before we use our calculator and we learn about binomial distribution on the calculator. Just apply this calculation for the 6 turns and 7 turns so you know how that works. Now, this is the wonderful calculation that you can have if you have a TI-84 calculator. You can download the app for $5. I remember back in my day, it was like you have to go to the store and go in for $80. Now it's on your phone for $5, and I'm sure you can ask ChatGPT to do it for free. But you can use this calculation. It's called binomial PDF, which is a binomial distribution, and it's going to calculate the probability for which essentially this binomial PDF is going to calculate these first. Pretty much the probability that we get to the point where we need to have that successful throw gag. And therefore we do, for the 5 turns, we do we could even make this n minus 1 just to make it clearer for the 5 turns. So n minus 1 is going to be 4 times 0.7, which is the probability that it hits, and there's 2 successes. So the first input here is going to be the number of trials that we're doing, which is 4 trials, because again, the last trial is fixed. It has to be a make, it has to be a success, times the probability, and we're looking for the number of successes is 2. So this is the probability that given you do 4 trials of something with a 70% probability of it happening, the odds that exactly 2 of them are successful is 26%. We multiply by the 0.7% for the remainder throw hitting, and we get 18.5%. Okay. And if you want to test them out, you should be able to run this calculation. You should be able to get to these same numbers. So you should probably also do that so you understand how the binomial PDF works. It's going to get even more simple when we add binomial CDF to our consideration, which it's going to not only do the probability for exactly X amount of turns, but it's going to do the probability of X or more. So it could be the probability that it takes at least 4 or at least 5 or at least 6 turns to kill the cog, to defeat the cog. And what it's actually going to do is it's going to calculate the probability for, in this instance, we're doing the probability that it is defeated after 4 turns. We're going to do binomial CDF, and it's going to be n, so not n minus 1, and I'll explain why in a second, but it's going to be 4 times 0.7 times 2. So essentially, this is the probability that after 4 turns, that the cog is still alive, which means that if we do 1 minus the probability that it's still alive, it's going to equal the probability that it was defeated. And we can see in this calculation, we can simply do this formula, 1 minus binomial CDF, 4.72, 4 trials, 70% probability, 2 successes, which is the probability that after 4 turns, there were 2 misses, which means that the cog is still alive. We get 65.1%, which is the same as 34.3% plus 30.8%. Hopefully my tune is still asleep or still awake. It is not awake, so I will go back into the game. We don't have to go through this whole thing now for Squirt. You can if you want practice. And we know that to kill 4 squirts, to kill the cog after 4 squirts, we know that it's 65.6%, which is higher probability than 65.1%, but it's a lot closer. If you remember for level 1, it was, I think, 86% versus 53%, which is like over 30% discrepancy. Here we're looking at a very marginal discrepancy. So I don't think that you should make your decision when it's this marginal based on the probability of defeating the cog after 4 turns. You have to think about other forms of optimization. One really great way to quickly identify what the better move would be is to consider the expected number of hits and the variance. Those are going to be 2 very key concepts that we will be returning to more than anything else: expected value and variance. So the expected value is just going to be the odds of something, or the value of something happening multiplied by the probability that it happens. The expected value of a coin flip would be, if heads you get $1, tails you get $0, is going to be 50 cents. You're never actually going to get 50 cents in that situation, but that's still the expected value. And when you multiply it by 2, you can see in the long run that makes sense, because the expected value of 2 coin flips is you're going to expect to get 1 heads and 1 tails, which means you're going to expect to get 0.5 times 2, which is $1. If we were to do this the long way, and I think originally when I was doing this math, I made some mistake. So this is actually the probabilities using the old ones, using the 0.73 number instead of the 0.7 number. I think I made a mistake in this calculation. But if you did this the long way and you adjusted these probabilities, you can do it yourself. This would be, for instance, this and then that. Then I guess I'll do it right here. It should take 2 seconds. 9.2 and then for 1, and then the probability that it takes more than 7, I'm just rounding this. This would actually go an infinitely long amount of times where you have to multiply by 9 and 10 and so on. The probability of it taking exactly 10, exactly 11, and so on, but I'm just estimating it here. And we should get around 4.3 if we did it out like this. Now this again is going to be incredibly cumbersome, so we have this very easy equation, which is simply taking the hits needed, which is going to be 3 for throw and 4 for squirt, and then dividing it by the probability of it happening, which makes sense because if something was 100% likely to happen, the expected amount of time it would take to kill the cog would of course be 3. If throw was 100% likely to hit, then the amount of times that you'd expect it to take to kill the cog, in fact you would know if it would take to kill the cog, would be 3. So it'd be 3 divided by 1. But here it's 0.7, so the amount of times that you would expect to take it to kill the cog is 4.28 compared to squirt, which is 4.44. So now we have a bit of a discrepancy here. Squirt is actually more likely slightly to kill the cog in 4 turns. But if we actually think about it as in we were killing level 2 cogs for a living every single day, well, we would save, it seems, time in the long run by using throw, because 34.3% of the time we're going to kill the cog in 3 turns. So in the long run, using throw is going to be more useful than using squirt. But there's a trade-off. The trade-off is there's higher variance in the throw. We can calculate variance using this equation, and then the standard deviation, which we'll get to that concept a little bit later perhaps, but essentially standard deviation and variance is going to be a little bit less quantifiable easily when you're dealing with smaller sample sizes like 3 or 4. I don't know why I don't know why I put E3 here. I'm going to change to this. And so it's going to be a little bit less useful right now, but nonetheless, it's good just to begin to know the variance equations, and we can still understand that squirt is less valuable than throw. Meaning, if we would use squirting flour, we are never going to kill the cog in 3, but it's very unlikely that's going to take 6 or 7 or 8 times, and you can calculate that exact probability. But here we see there's a 3.1% chance that it takes more than 7 turns. I would wager that that is less than 1% using squirt. So now we have a decision to make before we decide what the optimal way to kill a level 2 cog is. Essentially, the trade-off is, do we want to kill it more efficiently, or do we want to guarantee around a narrow guarantee that we take exactly around 4 or 5 turns to kill the cog? And that's when we need to consider the probability of dying. So here's a telemarketer's attack damage frequency that uses the attack, the accuracy of the attack, and therefore the expected damage per turn. And we can see that we only expect to take around 2 damage of turn if we're facing a level 2 telemarketer. Which means that we should not be, I'm just going to kill the first level 2 cog I see. I don't know if it's going to be a telemarketer or not. If there's any cogs in the street, it looks like there's like many tunes on this street, which is going to take away. Let's go to a different district to make sure that a tune doesn't join our... Oh, perfect. The telemarketers have taken over Toontown. This is precisely what we wanted. It's a sign, if you will. If you want, that's okay too. But we noticed that there seems to be a pretty low probability of dying, but we need to consider there's a chance that we actually die in 4 turns. Level 2 telemarketer, this is perfect. Well, I haven't even made the decision yet of what we're going to do. So there seems to be a pretty low likelihood that we die in this battle, but we have to consider sort of, if we get really unlucky, we could die in 4 turns. If the telemarketer uses double talk or Rolodex 4 times in a row and it always hits, but that seems pretty unlikely. But then again, so this is the trade-off here. We have to either make sure that we're killing this cog in 4 or 5 turns, which using squirt will do, or we can risk it and try to take advantage of the probability that we kill the cog in 3 turns. This is going to come down to a little bit of personal preference. This is not as clear-cut as the level 1 decision. However, I personally think that it's going to be a lot more important to kill the cog in, say, 5 or less turns. Because if it takes more than 7 turns, we are probably going to die. Or it's at least likely that we die. By using Squirt, we eliminate this tail risk of running very, very poorly and dying. If, however, it was actually a situation where we needed to kill the cog in 3 turns or 4 turns, then I would probably want to gamble and use throw, because it's not going to be much use. If we needed to kill the cog in 3 turns, for instance, you would have to use throw and just gamble. But I think there's a very low probability of dying if we use Squirt, although using throw opens up the probability of death. If there was no probability of death, say we had a 25 or 26 laugh toon in this situation, which we don't have, we only have 15 laugh. In that situation, then I would probably want to use throw, because it is on the whole going to, on average, get the job done quicker. I have no idea what super squirt is. Okay, it looks like it makes this, it looks like it actually increases the, the damage done by squirt, which makes this an easier video. This, it's quite clear under this situation that you're just going to want to use squirt, because 3 squirt gags is going to do this trick, so that actually makes this easier. But nonetheless, we get to see this play out. I'll also defeat another cog, this time with 11 laugh, and we will again think a little bit on the fly about what the best way to approach this is. Given our analysis, we know the expected amount of cogs, the expected amount of turns is going to take using throw and using squirt. Hopefully, there's no super throw, super squirt here, just so we can get back to the math fundamentals. But you can also calculate this. Okay, we have thrilling throw now, which means that's 5. So if we were to think a little bit on this fly about how this is going to change things, it's actually not going to change anything, because it's still going to take 3 throws to kill the cog. So you may say, well, now I have super throws, and it makes it more advantageous to use throw. Actually not. Our analysis is identical, because it still takes 3 cupcakes to kill the cog. Now, the thing that makes this slightly more complicated is the fact that you can now use a mixed strategy, which is using 2 throws and a squirt. Now, my intuition is that this is actually going to be the optimal strategy, because we notice that the probabilities of killing the cog in 4 turns using an all-throw strategy and an all-squirt strategy were very similar. But using this strategy, we can kind of get the benefits of killing the cog earlier by using the throw strategy, the all-throw strategy, mixed in with the higher accuracy of adding in a squirting flower to the mix. Therefore, I'm very confident that this was the optimal strategy to deploy, and that's why once you build up kind of an intuition behind it, you can make decisions on the fly. And even though we have in our toolbox the expected amount of times it's going to take to kill a cog and the variance, that's why we can kind of intuitively apply it, and we are not just stuck on the calculations of exactly the probability of killing the cog in 3 turns or 4 turns. We now have things like expected value and variance that we can now apply and think on the fly when we're in a new situation, when variables that are all of a sudden thrown at us that we didn't know about, like thrilling throw or super squirt, whatever the case may be. So this is great. I think that was also optimal, even if we didn't have thrilling throw. I still think that using throw would have been a decent decision, because time is of the essence. At least by using 3 throws, we are giving ourselves the opportunity to kill the cog in 3, because the telemarketer could hypothetically kill us in 3 turns when we only have 11 laugh. And if, let's just say, the first 2 throws miss and we're down to 3 laugh, we can just run from the battle, and we can then make adjustments like that. So hopefully we got a mix in this video. I think I spoke pretty quickly, but I think we went over a lot of things. So please rewatch things that you maybe didn't get the first time around. Ask in the comments for clarification if I didn't explain something well enough. And I think that this was all around a productive video, and you can see how complicated this game gets as we went from killing a level 1 cog to a level 2 cog. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.